On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected.
Thank you to all our amazing channel members for your generous support.
Olivia Newton-John, the beloved singer, actress, and philanthropist, died on August 8, 2022, at the age of 73 after a long public battle with breast cancer. Her passing was natural in cause, but it carried the weight of a decades-long struggle, one she had first faced in 1992, endured again in 2013, and confronted a final time in 2017. In an era when celebrities often kept illness hidden, Newton-John used her platform to speak openly about her condition, becoming an advocate for cancer research, plant-based medicine, and emotional healing. Her willingness to merge vulnerability with hope reflected the late 20th and early 21st century's growing emphasis on transparency, advocacy, and personal agency in healthcare. Her death was met with a global wave of tributes. Fans mourned not only the star of Grease, whose portrayal of Sandy became a pop culture touchstone, but also a woman whose career spanned country, pop, and film, winning 4 Grammy Awards and selling over 100 million records. Public figures from entertainment, politics, and activism honored her as both an icon and a humanitarian. For many, her passing amplified her legend, transforming her from a nostalgic star into a symbol of optimism and compassion in the face of adversity. The immediate consequence of her death was an outpouring of charitable donations to causes she championed, particularly the Olivia Newton-John Cancer Wellness and Research Center in Melbourne. Her advocacy work, tied so closely to her public identity, meant that her death did not mark an end, but rather a renewal of her mission. In this way, her passing not only solidified her cultural status, but also ensured that her influence would continue through tangible contributions to cancer treatment and awareness. Newton-John's death also reflects the values of her era, a blending of celebrity and activism, the breaking down of taboos around illness, and the idea that fame can, and perhaps should, be leveraged for the greater good. She embodied a model of stardom in which artistry and empathy coexisted, influencing future generations of public figures to merge personal authenticity with global advocacy. We immortalize her through the enduring popularity of her music and films, tributes and concerts and award shows, and the continued work of her foundation. Her story reminds us that mortality does not diminish legacy, it can magnify it, especially when a life has been lived with grace, generosity, and unwavering courage. Olivia Newton-John's final bow was not an exit, but a handoff to those who will carry her light forward. Glen Campbell, the legendary American singer, guitarist, and television host, died on August 8, 2017, at the age of 81, after a long and public battle with Alzheimer's disease. His death was from natural causes, yet it reflected a growing openness in the 21st century about discussing degenerative illnesses, a sharp contrast to earlier eras when such conditions were often hidden from public view. Campbell and his family chose transparency, documenting his struggle in the 2014 documentary Glen Campbell, I'll Be Me, which offered an unflinching look at the toll of Alzheimer's while celebrating the resilience of creativity and love. Campbell's career had bridged country and pop, with hits like Rhinestone Cowboy and Wichita Lineman becoming cultural touchstones. In the 1960s and 70s, he embodied the optimistic cross-genre spirit of American music, where traditional country storytelling met polished mainstream appeal. His death marked the end of an era in which television variety shows, crossover hits, and studio musicianship shaped the public's musical landscape. The immediate aftermath of his passing saw tributes from across the entertainment industry, from country legends to rock icons, underscoring the breadth of his influence. Fans revisited his catalog, streaming surged, and his final album, Adios, released just months before his death, gained renewed attention as a poignant farewell. His openness about his illness had already reshaped public conversation, encouraging early diagnosis, funding research, and breaking stigma, a legacy that extended beyond music. Campbell's death amplified his legend by reframing his career not only as a story of talent and success, but as one of courage and dignity in decline. In an era that often values perfection and youth, his willingness to perform while impaired, sometimes forgetting lyrics but never losing heart, resonated deeply. It reflected the shifting values of a society increasingly comfortable with vulnerability as a form of strength. We continue to immortalize Glen Campbell through tribute concerts, biographical works, and the enduring emotional pull of his recordings. His guitar work, once the invisible backbone of countless hits as part of the Wrecking Crew, is now celebrated alongside his solo achievements. In the collective memory, Campbell stands as both a consummate entertainer and a public face of a disease that touches millions, showing how mortality can deepen rather than diminish a legacy. His death reminds us that the measure of a life is not just in its triumphs, but in how it faces its final chords, with honesty, grace, and song. Fay Ray, the Canadian-American actress immortalized as the Scream Queen of early Hollywood, died peacefully in her sleep on August 8, 2004, at the age of 96. Her passing was due to natural causes, the quiet end to a life that had once echoed with the thrilling chaos of Hollywood's golden age. Best remembered for her role as Ann Darrow in the 1933 classic King Kong, Ray's death reflected the arc of an entertainment era that had evolved from black-and-white adventure films to the digital blockbusters of the early 21st century. Her death came just days before the Empire State Building's scheduled unveiling of its King Kong exhibit, an uncanny timing that linked her passing to her most iconic cinematic moment. The image of Ray clutched in the giant ape's hand, screaming high above New York City, had become one of cinema's most enduring symbols. Her departure served as a cultural reminder of the early days of special effects, when storytelling and performance were the primary tools for captivating audiences. In the immediate aftermath, tributes poured in from filmmakers, actors, and classic film enthusiasts. Peter Jackson, who was then completing his remake of King Kong, called her an inspiration, underscoring how her legacy bridged generations of filmmakers. Turner Classic Movies ran marathons of her work, reigniting interest in her career beyond her most famous role, showcasing her range in thrillers, romances, and adventures of the 1930s. Ray's death amplified her legend by framing her as one of the last living links to pre-war Hollywood. She had navigated the challenges faced by actresses of her era, typecasting, the transition from silent films to sound, and the limited agency afforded to women in the industry, while still creating a lasting cultural footprint. The fact that her most iconic role came in a monster film, a genre often dismissed at the time, speaks to how popular culture can elevate unlikely art into timeless myth. Her passing reflects humanity's tendency to immortalize individuals through the lens of their most powerful stories. For Ray, that story is forever intertwined with the tragedy and spectacle of King Kong. She is remembered not just in film retrospectives, but also in pop culture homages, from parodies to statues, proving that art can preserve memory as vividly as history books. In her life and death, Fay Ray reminds us that legends are not only built from the roles we play, but from the way those roles endure in collective imagination. Patricia Neal, the Oscar-winning actress, celebrated for her magnetic screen presence and resilience, died on August 8, 2010, at the age of 84 from lung cancer. Her death, natural yet deeply symbolic, reflected both the medical realities of her generation and the shifting cultural attitudes toward women in Hollywood. A lifelong smoker, in an era when tobacco use was glamorized and rarely associated with public health warnings, Neal's passing highlighted the long-term consequences of habits once encouraged by the entertainment industry itself. Neal's career spanned decades, marked by triumphs and tragedies that mirrored the complexities of mid-20th century America. She won an Academy Award for HUD, 1963, starred in iconic films like The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951, and embodied a brand of intelligence and depth rare among leading ladies of her time. Yet her off-screen life was a story of endurance. She survived multiple strokes in 1965, an event that temporarily robbed her of speech and mobility. In an era when such health crises often ended careers, Neal's determination to return to acting became a testament to perseverance, earning her admiration far beyond the film industry. The immediate reaction to her death was one of respectful remembrance. Tributes poured in from fellow actors, filmmakers, and fans, celebrating not only her body of work, but her courage in overcoming adversity. Unlike some stars whose legends grow primarily through scandal or mystery, Neal's legacy was amplified by the way she confronted hardship, making her an enduring symbol of grace under pressure. Her death also underscored broader cultural values of her time. The 1950s and 1960s were eras when Hollywood's golden image often concealed personal struggles, yet Neal's public recovery from her strokes challenged the industry's tendency to sideline those with disabilities or visible health issues. Her openness paved the way for more candid conversations about illness, rehabilitation, and the human spirit's capacity to endure. Patricia Neal's story and the way she is remembered reflects humanity's deep respect for resilience in the face of mortality. We immortalize her through film retrospectives, biographies, and awards named in her honor, ensuring her example continues to inspire. In art and memory, Neal stands as proof that personal courage can be as captivating and as enduring as any role played on the silver screen. Her death closed a remarkable life, but her spirit remains alive wherever stories of strength are told. Karen Black, the acclaimed American actress whose work defined much of 1970s cinema, died on August 8, 2013 at the age of 74 after a long battle with ampullary cancer, a rare form of the disease affecting the bile duct and pancreas. Her death was natural in medical cause, yet emblematic of an era in which the conversation around cancer was becoming increasingly public, shaped by openness from both ordinary people and celebrities. Black's decision to share her health struggles, often through her husband's updates online, reflected a growing cultural movement toward destigmatizing illness and embracing the power of communal support, especially in the digital age. Her career had been a vibrant tapestry of unconventional roles, from the doomed stewardess in Airport 1975 to the gothic mystery of Trilogy of Terror and the counterculture spirit of Easy Rider. At a time when Hollywood's landscape was shifting away from traditional studio archetypes, Black's willingness to play flawed, complex women made her a symbol of the new Hollywood era's creative experimentation. Her passing marked not just the loss of a performer, but the closing of a chapter in American film history when risk-taking and subversive storytelling were at their height. The immediate consequence of her death was a resurgence of interest in her work, with tributes from fellow actors, directors, and film critics who regarded her as a trailblazer. Obituaries celebrated her ability to bring vulnerability, danger, and authenticity to every role, cementing her as an artist whose influence reached beyond her era. While she had never been a mainstream box office queen, her legend was amplified in death. Her cult following expanding as new audiences discovered her performances through streaming platforms and retrospectives. Her passing also spoke to the values of her time, the embrace of individuality, the challenge to traditional beauty standards, and the idea that art could reflect society's fractures rather than smooth them over. In life and in death, Karen Black stood for a kind of authenticity that resisted Hollywood's more polished facades. We continue to immortalize her through restored editions of her films, documentary tributes, and film festival retrospectives dedicated to her work. She remains etched in cinematic memory not only for her haunting characters, but for her embodiment of a period in American culture when art dared to be strange, political, and deeply human. Karen Black's death reminds us that mortality can seal an artist's place in history, transforming a career into a legacy and a name into a lasting cultural echo. ChiChi Rodriguez, the charismatic Puerto Rican golfer known as much for his flamboyant style as for his skill on the course, died on February 8, 2025, at the age of 89 from natural causes. His passing marked the close of a chapter in professional golf that blended sport, personality, and showmanship in a way that few modern players attempt. Rodríguez's death reflected the values of his era in golf, the 1960s through 1980s, when individuality and flair could coexist with discipline and sportsmanship, and when golf was expanding its global reach to include more diverse voices and faces. Born Juan Antonio Rodríguez in Rio Piedras, Puerto Rico, he overcame poverty to become one of the most recognizable figures in the game. His trademark sword dance after sinking a birdie putt symbolized joy and self-expression in a sport often characterized by restraint. His career, 8 PGA Tour wins and 22 victories on the Senior PGA Tour, helped pave the way for greater Latino representation in professional golf. In this way, his passing also served as a reminder of the cultural and racial barriers that athletes like him challenged during the mid-20th century. The immediate aftermath of his death saw tributes from the golf community, Puerto Rican leaders, and fans worldwide. Commentators reflected on how Rodríguez's public image, a mix of skill, wit, and humility, brought new audiences to golf. In Puerto Rico, his philanthropic work, especially the ChiChi Rodriguez Youth Foundation, took center stage in remembrances, highlighting his dedication to education and at-risk youth. His legacy and community service ensured that the conversation about his life extended beyond fairways and greens. Rodríguez's death amplified his legend, not because it came unexpectedly, but because it reminded fans of a period when golf was more than statistics and tournament wins. It was a performance, a story, and a personality-driven spectacle. In an era where sports marketing often prioritizes image control, his genuine charm feels even more valuable in retrospect. Humanity's relationship with mortality, as seen through Rodríguez's passing, often centers on how we remember the vibrancy of a life rather than its final moment. We immortalize figures like him through highlight reels of his playful celebrations, documentaries on his life, and the continuation of his charitable programs. In the end, ChiChi Rodriguez's story reminds us that legacy is not just in titles or trophies, but in the laughter, inspiration, and opportunities left behind, proof that joy can be as enduring as victory. Barbara Belgettes, the American actress beloved for her role as Miss Ellie Ewing on the long-running television series Dallas, died of lung cancer on August 8, 2005, at the age of 82. Her death was the result of natural causes related to illness, closing the curtain on a career that spanned Broadway, Hollywood, and primetime television. In many ways, the circumstances of her passing reflected the health challenges of her generation, particularly the prevalence of smoking during the mid-20th century, a habit once glamorized in Hollywood, but later linked to serious disease. Belgettes' career had begun in the 1940s, a time when Hollywood's studio system tightly controlled the images and careers of actresses. She transitioned seamlessly from stage to screen, earning an Academy Award nomination for I Remember Mama, 1948, and later reinventing herself for television audiences. Her portrayal of Miss Ellie, the moral heart of Dallas, stood in sharp contrast to the scheming oil tycoons around her, embodying values of integrity, family loyalty, and quiet resilience during an era when American television was shifting toward glossy, serialized dramas. The immediate consequences of her passing were felt most strongly by fans of Dallas and the television industry. Tributes from co-stars and critics highlighted her grace both on and off camera, noting how she managed to convey strength without resorting to theatrical excess. For many, her death symbolized the fading of a television era when family sagas dominated the cultural conversation before reality television and streaming platforms reshaped viewing habits. Her passing did not radically shift the course of history, but it did amplify her legend in the world of American entertainment. Belgettes became emblematic of the rare performer who could sustain authenticity in an industry often built on artifice. Her career was a testament to adaptability, surviving the decline of the studio system, the rise of television, and the cultural transformations of post-war America. Barbara Bel Geddes' death invites reflection on how we remember figures who brought stability and moral grounding to fiction. While she did not play political leaders or historical icons, her characters resonated deeply with audiences, shaping their emotional landscapes. Through reruns, fan conventions, and television history retrospectives, her work continues to be celebrated, proving that immortality in the public imagination is not reserved solely for the powerful or controversial. Sometimes, it belongs just as much to those who quietly, but indelibly, leave their mark on the human heart. Shirley Jackson, one of America's most influential writers of psychological horror and unsettling fiction, died suddenly on August 8, 1965, at the age of 48. The cause was heart failure, attributed to long-term health struggles including obesity, heavy smoking, and anxiety-related conditions. Her passing was a natural death, yet it reflected the hidden toll of mid-20th century pressures on women, particularly those balancing creative ambition, domestic responsibilities, and societal expectations in an era that often minimized or stigmatized mental health struggles. Jackson had gained literary fame with works like The Lottery, 1948, a short story that shocked readers with its depiction of ritualistic violence in an ordinary town, and novels such as The Haunting of Hill House, 1959, which would later be hailed as a masterpiece of supernatural fiction. Her writing often revealed the quiet menace lurking beneath polite society, making her an unflinching observer of human nature. Her death at such a relatively young age stunned the literary world and deprived it of a voice that had only begun to fully mature. The immediate consequence of her passing was a wave of tributes from fellow authors and critics who recognized the originality of her voice, even if she had never fully received the mainstream recognition she deserved during her lifetime. In the years that followed, her death became part of her literary mystique. Much like the eerie, unfinished quality of her stories, her career ended abruptly, leaving readers to imagine the unwritten works that might have come. In a cultural sense, her death amplified her legend. The 1960s were a period of upheaval in American literature, with countercultural and experimental voices rising to prominence. Jackson's themes, conformity, alienation, and the cruelty lurking beneath civility, resonated deeply in the shifting social landscape. Posthumous publications like We Have Always Lived in the Castle, 1962, gained renewed attention, and her work influenced generations of writers from Stephen King to Neil Gaiman. Jackson's death invites reflection on humanity's complex relationship with mortality and art. We often romanticize artists who leave too soon, framing them as enigmatic figures whose legacies feel frozen in time. In Jackson's case, her passing became inseparable from the dark, enduring power of her stories. She is immortalized not through monuments or statues, but in the persistent unease her words evoke, a form of commemoration as potent as any carved in stone. In remembering her, we acknowledge the way literature allows a voice to outlive the body, whispering to new generations long after the author is gone.